morning and welcome to the Morning Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Camp, coming to you as always from the Spotlight Studios here in Morristown, New Jersey. My guest today is a student of heartbreak and self-discovery, a lifelong partner of trauma and disguised happiness. She has taken over her life. Starting from a broken home and a broken journey, she started her life again while taking her little big family along with her. She has now become the little big sis that we all needed to turn our downfalls into our biggest wins, to reclaim the fulfillment most of us search for nearly every day. She is Faith Williamson. Faith, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. That was such a great opener.
Thank you.
I'm sitting here like, oh, he can really remember what's going on in my life. In reality.
Well, in reality, actually, I wrote the whole thing down because there was no way I was going to remember that.
Which is totally fine. That's usually how mine play out too. But,
right. But, you got to do what you got to do. I want to make sure I do you justice bringing you on the show. So make sure I hit all the main points so that people that are listening know what they're getting themselves into with this episode.
Yeah. And I'll be completely honest. When I listen to your podcast, I'm sitting there and I'm like, what would I ever be able to bring to my Cam's The Morning Spotlight? Because I feel like just title insurance has nothing to do with what I'm doing. But I love that you spotlight each and every person along the way. It's incredible.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, that's what I think, like where I think the coolest guy in title insurance side comes into it. Because Tuesdays we do the real estate stuff and that's all fine and good. But on Thursdays, we do like a lot of different stuff. And, like I've known you now, at least from a Clubhouse perspective, for a few months, I guess.
I was going to say like 3, 4 months.
3 or 4
I
months.
Can't even remember that far back, but it seems about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why Clubhouse has been such a great entity for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally have maybe zero friends outside of like Clubhouse and social media and even the marketing space. I'm not going to say zero friends. I have quite a few friends,
right.
But the ones that I actively speaking with, I sometimes forget that I don't go outside and do those things. It's usually me, myself, my daughter, and then all of you guys, which is great. Because I build those connections and it's hard to keep 1,000 connections very intimately.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And I do think, so I know your following on Clubhouse is larger than mine. And I also have a decent sized following on Clubhouse as well. But I think that that is one of the cool things about the app. And I think that just like the little community that you and I have kind of just found ourselves in over like you said, the first 3 or 4 months of being on there, is that we've found people that are like-minded like us, but also we come from different parts of the world, different backgrounds, different family lifestyles, different whatever. And I think that it's just so interesting to me that we've all gotten ourselves to this same point. So, I had B on a while ago. I'm going to wind up having like a bunch of the other people that are on here, in that community on this show at some point over the next few months. Everybody's going to learn a little bit more about it. But I've been listening to a lot of your Little Big Sis, which also, just for anybody that hasn't listened, Faith probably has the best intro to any podcast that exists on the internet. It's amazing.
That intro, man, it was so crazy. I had thought one day I need to make a podcast. That's what people are asking for. That's what my following is following me for, is more interesting content than what I can just bring along with TikTok. And so when I did that intro, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this my first try. Let's go ahead. And within 2 minutes of that first intro, I was like, okay, I'm sending this off. Like, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not doing anything. Like, I like this. Yeah. And I probably sent it to like 50 people. And I said, listen to this and tell me if this is okay. Yeah. Even though in my head, I thought it was perfect. But I think that's how everybody kind of works,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was the same way, especially like when I started doing my intro stuff. I would be like, listen to this. What does this sound like? How do you, what do you think? And then eventually I was just like, well, whatever. Like, it's never going to be perfect enough for everybody else, and like I would be my harshest critic anyway. So I was just like, it's good. Just gotta go with it.
It's just done.
Yeah, it's just done. That's the other thing too. It's just like once you get it done, it's done. But it does give me like goosebumps whenever I listen to it because it's just like it's so badass. It's just like a good intro, and I just think it's awesome. So, but listening to that show and what I was, eventually weaving my way towards with that, little intro there was that, like your life background is a lot different than mine. It's a lot different than a lot of people. But you've been able to take that and use that to help a lot of people. And just listening to the show and kind of getting to know you over the last 3-4 months on Clubhouse and, all the stuff, it's just like, that's what I think is one of the cool things about you is that you just kind of put yourself out there extremely vulnerable to help other people. And that's when you said originally, like, you weren't sure what you were going to be able to bring to the spotlighters, which is like what I call the morning spotlight audience. I think that's it, and I think that that's where you're going to be able to kind of, if there's somebody out there that has stuff that they're going through that's similar, or even just like thoughts that, maybe they're just not like good enough or not, whatever, just like this episode, or obviously, any of your episodes is going to put them hopefully back on the right track. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Do you have
No,
anything?
I was just gonna say, like, most people, when they first, either they be my friends or they be somebody that just finds me on TikTok, they never connect the two, that the human person, me, is the same person on TikTok, is the same person on my podcast.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so funny, is that when we talk, in our little group chats and things like that, I feel like not many people would realize, like, oh, that person has done that thing. So
Yeah.
I kind of enjoy letting, who I am really out on the podcast. And I always continue to do that because of the fact of, I can talk to you all day long, but we're never going to know where each other comes from unless we can really sit down and have that conversation. And that's why I really started the podcast. So,
yeah, right. But you did mention earlier, I forget, because we've already been talking for, I guess, like 10 minutes already. And we haven't even started the show yet. But you did mention that you're kind of like following the Little Big family started on TikTok.
Yes.
So we're going to kind of like not breeze through your story, because I think that that's really important. But absolutely, I do want to just kind of talk about the TikTok thing and like why TikTok, and then why did you just be like, hey, I'm just going to start putting up, these types of videos, the stuff that you put on your TikTok page, and then, what the initial reaction was to those.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I can get started with a really quick synopsis if you'd like. And I feel like I've done it so many times. It's pretty easy. But I came from and still come from a really broken home. And I think, like most people, we tend to not talk about it. We tend not to, really dive into who we are. So, I'm 25 now. I started realizing so much was happening when I was about 14, because 14, my father and my mom completely separated ways. And that was when I felt the most, I guess, most alone. And it was crazy that something I never have talked about ever to anybody is that there's two things I always wanted to be. It was a motivational speaker and a pilot. But the reason why is because pilots can go wherever they want. They can fly away. And that was always the signal behind it for me. But then the motivational speaker was when I was in junior high school, a speaker came to our school, and he had grabbed me up as somebody to participate in whatever they were doing. And he really touched me that day. It was, you picked me out of all the people who were really going through something that was really tough. And he was able to speak to me. And at that moment in time, I was like, I always know that I want to do this for other people. And I never thought about it much as I was struggling through being homeless at a point. I was sleeping at a park for, I think it was like a month, and then just trying to find my way. I had to start working when I was 14 and a half. And at that point, I had no relationship with my parents, my sisters, and my brother. And so that's what brought me into who I am today, is because that loneliness. My whole point of Your Little Big Sis is, and the Your Little Big family, is to close the 61% population that actually feels alone. And I've done so much research on it. And if you pass the person on the next to you, or if you pass the person behind you, you will know somebody who feels alone in life, or at one point, however long that was, felt alone. And I feel like most people don't have that person to come talk to. So that's why Your Little Big Sis got started, and this Your Little Big family is going to continue on.
Yeah. But why TikTok? Like, what was the...
Oh, okay. TikTok, honestly, TikTok had just kind of sprouted at that point.
Was this last year that you started
this was last year in August. No, it was August.
Yeah.
I started in August, and I had gotten out of this really crazy relationship that was just bad from the get-go. And I knew that, but we had broken up, and it was the one time where I wasn't controlled. And TikTok was going off. I thought, where is everybody right now? And I had already had TikTok downloaded on my phone, but where's everybody at right now? Who are all the people that feel the same as me right now? And that was TikTok. That was the one thing. And plus at that point, TikTok, you can put out anything into the world and it can come back tenfold. So the marketing side of my mind was like, okay, let's do something that can really, forward my message out there. So I started talking about relationships and toxicity and inner toxicity. And then it just took me, I think it was 3 to 4 months later, I was up to 30,000 followers. And to some, it doesn't seem like a lot because we know people with 24 million followers.
It seems like a lot to me, but
yeah. And to me, that was an amazing amount of people. And I was like, okay, I got to keep going. I got to keep on doing this. And I just thought, you know what, TikTok is my space. I need to keep it here and I need to make sure that I can funnel from one to another. Right. And I think that was able to sprout my podcasting idea.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah. So now that I was just curious because I don't think I ever really knew that, knowing you for that long. And that was like one of the things because I had B on a little while ago, and like we were kind of going through like the tear out the tags like idea, and I was like asking her all these questions, and she was just like, "Isn't it crazy that we've known each other for so long now, and like I don't actually know like the full
extent story?"
And so like I feel like I get most of it, but that there's still I just want to flesh out some of the ideas. But I was just curious. I don't know why I was curious, but that's just kind of how like my brain operates. But I do want to jump back into the life story because I do think that like kind of building out that a little bit more would help the listeners kind of get to know you a little bit more. And that's why you're here. So you mentioned, around like 14 was when you started to kind of like become aware of like the family dynamics that you had weren't great. Like for lack of a better way to describe it. So like, what were some of those things that you were going through? I didn't realize you had siblings. I mean, I don't know why I assumed that you didn't. But how many siblings did you have? And like, what was the family dynamic like and why did it suck for lack of a better word?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an older sister and we share the same birthday, but we're 5 years apart. So we already didn't have that much of a relationship. I'm a lot younger. She was a lot older. And so we just kind of missed the mark on that one. But me and my brother are only 9 months apart. So we were supposed to be that close. But, as teenagers, you're kind of like, you do your thing, I do my thing. And that was already something that, I was okay with at the time, but they were all going through their own mental strains in life. And so I understood, but I did yearn for that connection because as my mom and dad were getting divorced, my dad actually went to jail for drug use and abuse. And so that broke my heart immediately because he was my best friend, or what I thought was my best friend, who, we look up to. Sometimes we look up to either our mom or our dad. I looked up to both, but getting your heart broken so young, you're almost like, okay, I didn't even know this was going on behind doors. We don't see that until it's in front of our eyes, because I did a good job of kind of keeping it behind doors, even though it's not a good job or a good thing to do. But my mom, I talk about this, in my podcast. She knows, she's very aware, but she turned to alcohol and pills because she was very hurt and she was mentally strained, and I understood that. So at that time, every person was so separated. And luckily, my sister had her boyfriend that she's had for now, I want to say 13 years. My brother had skating and my uncles. He had so many people there for him, and the mentorship program he was a part of, and all of his friends. He was very popular in high school, which I love to say because he was such a good kid. And then I know I'm laughing as the younger sister saying that.
Right. Yeah.
But my mother, we disconnected. We completely disconnected. She looked at me as my father's child and not her child. And so at that point, it was, I don't care about you. And at that moment, I'm 14, 13 and a half, 14. And I'm sitting there like, okay, what do? I come home. I have to walk home, I think it was like 2.5 miles home from school after, softball practice. And
you grew up in like Orange County, right?
Yes.
Orange County, California. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in Fullerton. But I would come home and there's no food in the house. There's no nothing. So I kind of had to figure out like, what am I going to do? What can I do? What's the easiest way to make sure that like I'm still at least eating? And I did what I had to do. I went to go talk to my grandmother at the time, which she lived like a block away. So I just talked to her, said, hey, this is what's going on. Can you help me out? Like, even if it's just bread, peanut butter, and jelly, like that's it. And she did. And that was like my little lifeline that I had. At least I had that lifeline. After that, I think about after 5 months of me walking home and seeing my mother absolutely obliterated, she woke up one day and she kicked me out of the house. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, I have no idea where to go from here.
How old when she kicked you out of the house?
I was about 14. I just turned 14. Okay, so this 14.
Is like 14 was like a pivotal age in your life.
It was, it was
everything seems like it's happening at 14.
Yeah.
I didn't even know like what was going on in my life when I was 14, but that's,
I know. I felt like I didn't really have the chance to, figure it out. I just had to figure it out.
Right.
I didn't have the stepping stones or any of that. So at that point, I, packed as much as I could. I think I had like 2 backpacks that I had from high school, and I went and I slept at the park. And luckily, I was able to do that much. But even going to my grandmother's at that point would have caused such a big ruckus for my grandmother. And she's older. I didn't want her to have to deal with that. I know she would have been fine. But at that moment, it was have my grandmother deal with an alcoholic who's on pills, or just kind of find my own way from there. And so for a month, I went to school, or I didn't go to school because I couldn't get there. I was exhausted. And I was staying up every single night looking at the stars, like making sure that nobody was around me that would come hurt me.
Right.
So at that point, it's like you're terrified at all points.
Yeah.
But
one
then,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
But one of the things that you said, so like I told you in like an Instagram message earlier today, I was listening back to as many episodes of your podcast as I could listen to just to kind of get a full scope of your Little Big Sis before we actually sat down and talked. And one of the things that I know that you just mentioned that like, and listen, like if I had to stay a night in a park here in New Jersey at 30 years old as a man, I would still be freaking out. So as a 14-year-old girl in California, I probably would be, I don't even know. I can't even like put that into my brain. But like one of the things that I thought was interesting was in that the first episode of the podcast, you talked about how like, it was almost like sleeping in the park for that month or whatever it was almost like a freeing type thing. Yeah. Like, it scared the shit out of you, but it was almost something that was like, you didn't have to go home to what you were going home to, which I just thought was such an interesting like take on that whole thing. Like the silver lining of what's not even a gray cloud. It's like literally like a black cloud. But I just needed to just kind of pepper that in there because I just thought that was like super interesting when I heard you talk about that in your episode.
Yeah, most people do find it kind of odd. And they always ask me like, why is that? Why do you think that was like the biggest, why is this your best memory that you have from your childhood? And I would always tell them, I'm like, it's because I had no more on my hands. I didn't have to worry about, if I was going to come home and get physically abused by my mother or get, at this point, I was getting physically abused by my brother as well. I didn't have to worry about that. And they didn't care where I was at. They weren't questioning me. They weren't telling me that I'm this or that. There was just so much abuse that was going on that even just it was actually only 2 blocks away from my house. Even just being 2 blocks away, being that scared was much better than being scared to walk in and have it happen from your own family.
Right.
Because you don't get a relief from that, right? You can run, you can call the cops from somebody else. You can, not worry. You can say, I don't mind calling the cops and you getting arrested. But anybody else, it's like, I'd be scared for my life. What would happen to my mom? What would happen to my brother if, the cops would show up? Instead, of sitting at home and crying and internalizing it, I was able to just be there and be silent and still every single night. And that was worth it to me every single time.
Yeah.
So that's exactly where I think about it in that moment. And when everybody asks me like, oh my gosh, like I would have never known. Well, it's because all those times of internalizing everything else, this is where we end up.
Right.
But shortly after that, luckily I had amazing best friends at school, and their mom and dad were like, come stay with us. Like, it's fine. Like, just come stay with us. We'll talk to your mom. Everything is going to be all right. We'll take care of you. We don't need anything from your mom. And that's what happened. I was with them until I turned 17. So almost 3 years that I almost felt like I had a family again, on and off.
Yeah.
But I moved around so much and I was always by myself that it's like you keep them at arm's distance, even though you're craving that.
Yeah.
You never know what somebody's going to do.
Right. You can't get too close because then like you don't want to almost like go through like the hurt all over again with a totally new family. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And luckily, because I had such great people that were supporting me in that moment, for high school, I was able to actually graduate 6 months ahead of my class. I was getting all of my extracurriculars. I had to stop softball, which was my favorite, but it's because I got really sick and I had damaged ovaries, which at that point in my life, that was another like aha moment, like, oh, you can never have kids. So within that time, there was just so many shocks that happened. And I was like, okay, it's okay. This is so much better than what I have dealt with in the past. So I'm good. But then my mom was like, oh, you actually have to come with me. We're moving to Las Vegas. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I haven't lived with you in 3 years. What do you mean? Like, and they're like, no, she's like, no, because if CPS, gets involved, then, I'm going to get in trouble. So you have to just up and come with me. And so that's what I did. I lived with my worst enemy in a state where I knew absolutely no one, took me away from anything that I had built for myself. And it was another huge, I would like to curse in this moment, but I can't. In that moment, it was just such a rough time for me. And I had been clinically depressed at that time. So at that moment I was in shock. I was sad. I was dealing with every emotion that you could think possible. And in my head the whole time I was like, I'm just going to keep on being alone. So it came back in full motion, in full circle. Being alone came back and just hit me in the face. So from there, it's like, what do you do?
Right.
Do you just stay in that home that in that place that you don't know anybody, or do you get out there and put yourself out there? And so that's what I did. I put myself out there. I had 3 jobs, 2 full-time jobs and 1 regular job. Luckily, I was able to actually split everything to where I was actually working throughout every single day, 7 days a week. I think it was 14 hours a day. And I ran myself to the ground. And I thought, hey, like, this is going to find me friends. This is going to find me a new family. This is going to do something because I'm here all the time. And what that did for me was the opposite. I was so drained. I was so just torn down that every second that I did have off, I would just sleep. Sometimes I would just sleep in my car at that moment. I'd fall asleep because I'm just, and
you're like 17 years old, right? At this point?
Yeah, I was 17 and I had turned 18 within that time of working those 3 jobs.
Right.
And next thing you know, I'm with this boy who I barely know. And what ends up happening at 19, I get pregnant. And it's a miracle. I'm like, wait, no. I came to the emergency room actually. And they're like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, I just feel some pain in my back. Like, that's all that's happening. And
right.
and they're like, oh, okay, is there any chance that you could be pregnant? And I'm like, no. I was told I could never have kids because I have damaged ovaries. And like, okay, can you sign these papers so we can get your medical records from the last hospital in California? I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And so 2 hours goes by and they're like, oh, okay, well, you're actually pregnant.
Yeah.
We just don't know how pregnant you are. I'm crying. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, there's no way. This is impossible. You guys are joking. I'm like, wait, doctors can't joke about this.
Yeah,
about
right.
This stuff,
like,
so
that's really effed up if they are joking with you. Yeah, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Knowing that I am not able to.
Yeah.
And so he's in the doctors with me. This is my daughter's father. He's in the doctors and he's like, we can't have a child. No, we cannot. Like, we're too young. And I'm like, look, you may not want a child. I do. Because I was told I never had the chance. So I'm going to go along with this.
Right.
And then.
Are you still living with your mom at this point? Or
No,
did you move out?
no. We moved out.
Okay.
We have like a little
You're
place
living with this boy that
that I met. Yeah.
your daughter's dad.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just us two.
Got it.
And at this point, I call my mom. I'm like, hey, I know we don't talk. I know that we don't really have a relationship because this whole time has just been, again, I want to cuss, but at that point, it just has not been a great experience for either one of us. And I think we were both just going through mentally rough things. So I understand that now.
Right.
But at this point, it's just me and him. He's saying no. I call my mom. I'm saying, hey, by the way, I'm pregnant. You're having a grandchild.
Yeah.
And she's like, I feel like did a 180 and was like the happiest she's ever been in her life.
Really?
And yeah, and it shocked me. I was so shocked. I was like, now you want to be happy? Now you want to be okay? But that had to happen. Everything that was in my life had to happen to prepare me for the moment of them telling me how far along I was. Because in that moment I was alone. He wanted me to, not have the baby, and my mom was just all over with her emotions. And they get along to, doing the ultrasound, and they're like, yeah, you're 5.5 months pregnant.
Oh my God.
At that moment, when I tell you shock, pure shock, I'm like, wait, what? Like, and they're like, you don't even look 2 months pregnant, let alone. And at this point, I was like 130, like I weighed 130 and I was super just lean. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, your baby's all in the back. Like she's sitting on your back, growing in your back.
Back pain.
Yeah.
And I'm like, doctor,
okay,
but
that makes sense of why I'm here in the first place. But
yeah.
I had never been so happy, motivated, but terrified. And not because I was going to have a kid, but because I thought I was going to be alone all over again. Even though I was going to have this child, I thought he's going to leave me. My mom's emotions are really weird, up and down. She's not even going to be there for me, and my family's going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And it's constantly having to go through that alone feeling of like, oh, it's coming. It's going to come up and bite you again.
Yep.
But it was actually my daughter was what brought everybody back together. My whole life was, at that point, it wasn't me. It was almost like my life before then did not ever happen.
Yeah. This was like the turning point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my mother asked me to coffee, and we sat down and we had coffee in a place called Samba Latte, which doesn't matter. But to me, it matters because that was the place I rekindled everything.
Right.
And she apologized. And she was like, I'm so sorry. I want to be a part of your life and your daughter's life and whatever you allow me to. And in that moment, it was like, what? Like, are we all confused here? Or is it just me? Because I'm very confused. I thought I was going to be alone. I was prepared to be alone. My whole life, I prepared to be alone. And that's the opposite of what happened. And I think that's when I rebuilt myself to say, hey, like, it's okay to not be alone. It's okay to have a little bit of help. And luckily,
was it hard? Like, because just like listening to this story, and this is now basically like the second time that I've listened to it because I listened to your episode this morning, but now hearing it from you, I just like such a totally different experience because like I'm watching you tell me this story, and it's like, to me, it's just insane. Like, again, like I told you at the outset, like I do not have the same experience as you. We have two totally different upbringings. And one of the things that I think is interesting, and I would, if you could expand on it, like, so you're 19 at this point, excuse me, you find out that you're pregnant. Your mom now wants to get back into your life after basically 19 years of treating you like shit. And is that something that's like difficult to do? Like to be like, okay, come on back. But was that like hard, knowing full well that now you're going to have a child and that kind of how your upbringing was, and if she's going to be the grandma of your child, what could that mean for your child? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry if your mom's listening, but I'm answering.
No, I mean, it's totally okay. She understands. And that's the greatest thing. But I had 3.5 months to really find that trust again and see if she's worked on her things. And it was crazy because she had gotten into a relationship, and it was with this wonderful man, and I love him to this day. He's like the dad that I wish that I would have had.
Yep.
And I think her finding, before she found him, finding herself, finding that she deserved love and that she deserved herself to be happy, that created this, like, I'm slowly going to start to trust you, but you're still going to have to earn it no matter what. And that's because I wanted my daughter to have a relationship with her. I wanted as many people in her life as possible to love her as much, or even just half as much as I do. I wanted that in her life. I wanted her to be surrounded by a bunch of people that just adored her. And so if that meant me completely taking out my personal feelings and just slowly, incrementally finding something to trust, then I would do it. And that's exactly what happened. My mom was incredible in that moment. Teresa Williamson, if you're listening, I love you. So
if you could spotlight her, that would be great. Yeah.
I do. I love her so much.
Yeah.
But she showed me something different. I had my car break down, and she was the first person to say, I'm going to come pick you up from work. You want to go out to lunch? You want me to, just hang out with you? Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling lonely? She knew all of the hormonal signs too, is that when I was being very shut off, my daughter's father didn't ever notice, but she would. So she would call me every single morning at 7:00 in the morning and say, are you okay? How are you feeling today? Do you want me to just completely step back from you today and let you have your space? And in that moment, I was like, you're learning, I'm learning. I'm so sorry about that. But at every point she was there, and she was holding my hand like I was a child again. Yeah. And I think in those moments I was like happy to be a child again.
Right.
And so we ended up moving in with her because she had extra room at her house, and she was like, let's make it easy because you're about to have this baby. Let's do it. And so she was there. And funny enough, like, my daughter was born the day after her birthday. And in that moment, she was so happy. She was elated. Everything was smooth sailing. Me and my daughter's father, of course, we just kind of had our differences, but at the same time, he wanted to, just continue on whatever I wanted to continue on. Yeah. Which probably wasn't the smartest thing. I feel like we should have maybe just split at that point, because we did have some physical moments where he, was abusive. And we tried to work it out as best as we could.
Yeah.
But then 2 weeks later, after having my daughter, I had a stroke. And it was the best thing to ever happen. Not really, not even slightly. But
We're laughing about his stroke. But all right. Yeah,
I laugh about every hardship because in those moments I'm like, wow, I really made it through that. Like, that's insane.
Right.
But yeah, I had a stroke. My mom was amazing. She really helped me. I couldn't be alone with my daughter for 6 months. And that tore me apart because it was like I was alone all over again.
Yep.
I couldn't hold her. I couldn't be in the same room with her without somebody else in there. And it tore me apart because it's the first, 2 weeks of your child being born, and you're being told you are not allowed to hold her by yourself.
Right.
Not even that time to just be me and her. So it took a lot out of me, but I kicked my own ass and I worked really hard to get my speech back. I do have a stutter sometimes because of it. Not many people notice it because I work really hard to keep it out.
I've literally not once in knowing you for the last 3 months have I ever noticed it. I've heard you mention it before, but I have literally never noticed it.
I actually think it's funny because I like to mention it because most people think that when I do stutter, they think it's, oh, she's making it up, or, oh, she's trying to find the words. And I'm like, no, actually the word is here. It's just not coming out.
Yeah, it's not coming out.
So
yeah,
it's just not coming out correctly.
Yeah.
But I worked really hard, and then I ended up getting a job because I could make more than my daughter's father at that point. He just didn't believe in himself as much as I believed in him in that moment. So that's basically where it went on. I felt so secluded. I had postpartum depression. There was so much to where I ended up isolating myself. And I think in those moments, I was working 12 hours a day, and I would get off of work and I would park somewhere in an empty parking lot, and I would scream. I would scream because I felt like this is the only place anybody's going to hear me. Like, even if it's nobody, I can do it and it's
Right.
fine. Like,
Yep.
I'll be okay. I'm sorry, this is getting like a little emotional here.
This is the
Because
first time
that's a hard part.
Yeah, we've never gotten emotional here on this show, which, first time, but thank you for sharing.
I think a lot of people don't understand is that when you are battling depression in any way, it sucks because you're sitting there needing people.
Yeah.
But you're secluding yourself from people.
Right.
So it's a constant battle. You're constantly doing that. And I think because of that reason, with dealing with postpartum depression and dealing with a stroke at the same time and working on everything, I had to be the toughest I've ever had to be in my life. I had to just suck it up. And even if I felt like crying in bed all day, there was none of that. I would just take my 5 seconds after work and scream it out and go home and make dinner and do the laundry and be a mom and be this girlfriend or, what would be wifely duties.
Right.
And I had to show up. But in my head, I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be anywhere.
Yeah. Do you think so one of the things, and like, I mean, I've talked about it on this show before, so I have no problem bringing it up now. Like, I've gone through my bouts with depression and, like bottoming out for some different reasons. But like, one of the things that I think that has helped me get to this point now in my life where I feel like I'm probably like the happiest that I've ever been is just the idea that like I figured out like who I am. And like, that is just a quest, right? It's a never ending quest. You can figure it out. And then the next day it's going to be totally different. You got to figure it out again.
Yeah.
But I feel like listening to this story, it's like at no point did you ever get a chance to just kind of like you said before, be a kid. You never had a chance to like have, some stability in your life. And then, now it seems like you kind of have a little bit coming in from your mom, but there's, still like, you're working on it type of thing. You have your boyfriend, your daughter's father, who's not really like kind of on the outs, I guess. So like at no point did you take a chance and now you have a daughter, like you have a baby.
Yeah.
Now you have to be there for somebody else again. So I think that is one of the things, like it sounds weird, but like being alone is extremely difficult. But if you can like figure that out, then I feel like that is something that can kind of get you back on track faster. And then you're able to kind of put yourself in a position to be with other people that can help amplify that happiness, right?
Yeah. It's almost like you're playing against yourself in every way, shape, or form. Like you need to be alone. That's what needs to happen to find yourself. But you have to, within that time, whether it be, 6 months, 5 years, or 50 years, you have to be okay with, you're not technically alone if you're okay within yourself. Like, because you always have, a bunch of other outlets. You always have a bunch of people. But when you're okay with yourself, you don't feel lonely. And that's what I was feeling, is that I was just feeling so lonely, but I was never alone. And that's harder. That's a lot harder than dealing with just being by yourself. Because in yourself, you can go and, start a new habit, start a new hobby, and you can, within those moments, find who you truly are. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's something I've always wanted to kind of put in words, is that I was around people 24/7, and I continued to be around people 24/7 up until last year, until I cut out all of the toxicity and just focused on, mom, I'm a mom, but I'm myself.
Yep.
And that's what I'm okay with now. So it took me a while to get there. It took me and him breaking up. There was cheating, infidelity, there was whatever you want to call it. There was that. So it put me into an even deeper inadequacy. I felt I was not enough. I would never be enough. Whatever it may be, I'm still not a good mom because I couldn't keep her father around. It was all of it. And then I fell into another relationship, which was not a good idea. It's never a good idea to feel that way and then just get into just go right back into it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was, I mean, at that point, you're so broken you're so broken internally, but you think, oh, I'm out of one relationship, I'm fine, like everything's
Yep.
gonna be good. It was not. It was
Right.
not good at all. But I was best friends with this person. We became best friends really, really quickly. It took about 6 months. We were all good. I went over to his house. My daughter went over to his house because we were just friends at that moment. And then come to find out, this man is controlling and preys on people. And I'm not going to say any names. Obviously, that's not what I'm about, but
Right.
people will prey on you when you're at your weakest.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to build people up as much as I can, is because it's normal. It's natural for these type of people to look at you're, a wonderful, kind-hearted person. I'm not saying me in general, but I mean, at that point I was.
Yeah.
But I was so low in myself that I was actually just yearning for anybody.
Anybody.
I
Yeah.
was so willing to take anybody and say, oh, you have fun with me and my daughter. Oh, you have, your parents love my daughter and we're just friends. Why don't we make this into something more? And that's what we did. And then again, I plummeted into the worst part of my life. I had 2 suicide attempts within that relationship of 3 years. I had never felt that low. I've never felt that insecure. I had never felt that alone while being around people. Even though I had my mom, I had, all of these people, I was taken away from everybody I did build up that relationship back with again. I had my brother, I had my sister's relationship back. I had my mom, I had my grandmother, my uncles, everything. And I was cut away from them because of this person. But because,
Right.
I'm not even going to put all of it on the another person. I did it because of me,
Yeah.
because I allowed that to happen because I was so weak.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like you said, I think before, it was like one of those things where you just like weren't even ready to get into
Yeah.
a relationship with somebody. And that's like one of the things that, I mean, I feel like anybody that's listening to this has probably gone through it at some point, is they get
Yeah.
themselves into a relationship, me included. I have one in particular that I know for a fact what happened, where like that was like, I would probably at my lowest self-esteem moment, maybe second lowest self-esteem moment ever. Right.
Yeah.
And got myself into a relationship because it was somebody that showed some interest in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, they're too good for me. And all the stuff the red flags were like flying up in front of my
Oh,
face
yeah.
constantly. And it was another thing. It was like 2 years. And I was just like, well, I can't do any better. So why not just ride out the storm? And then eventually I like to call it, I'm not a religious person by any stretch of the imagination, but I had my coming to Jesus moment. And I
Yeah.
was like, what are you doing? And then, eventually kind of shook myself, got out of it. And it took a while to kind of get myself back on track. But, I think not everybody goes through like the same type of stuff, but there are people that go through relationships because they just get into it thinking that the other person is going to fill the void. But the only person that can actually fill the void is you. You got to figure your own shit out before you can get, and, with other people.
And it's crazy that most of the time when we find ourselves is at the last breaking point. It's at the, like, it's going to take 4 or 5, maybe 20, 30 times. And it has to be something that's really bad. And or it's something that's super, super light. I feel like there's never an in-between moment. And all of the times that I've heard people's stories, it's never that like, oh, we just had a really bad fight and we just amicably decided that we just don't need to be together anymore. No, it's either something that like you're at your last straw with, and it was something so small and you're like, yeah, I just gotta go. Yeah. Or it's something that was like ridiculous, like they put their hands on you, okay, y'all need to split, and that's it. So with this 3-year relationship, it's the first January, February, March. So right when quarantine hit, I would say March is when the physical abuse got the worst. I feel like every relationship I had been in, I had been physically abused. And I always thought to myself, I'm like, it's my fault. In those moments, I was thinking it's my fault because everybody wouldn't do it if it wasn't me.
Yeah.
So I stayed. And in my head, what happens all the time is that I think, I cannot give up on this person who's going through a tough time just because they're giving me a tough time, because I don't want them to be alone. And how it messes up
your whole thought process, I was allowing myself to continuously get hurt because I didn't want somebody else to go through being alone.
Right.
And that's insane because it all stemmed from when I was, that little girl who was left alone in the park. Now I never want anybody else to do it, but I was doing it so unhealthily. Like, it was not healthy for me to think that way in any one of my relationships, yet I did it over and over and over again. So one night, it was June. Yeah, it was in June.
Of last year.
Okay. This is when, it's mid-quarantine. Everybody's really angry. Nobody really liked each other in this moment because we can't see other people.
Yeah,
it's hard. We were laying in bed and we were actually not in the worst situation in that moment. We were watching TV and then we, went to bed. And luckily, no fighting happened when my daughter was around. It was only when she was gone with her dad. But she was here, and I was thinking to myself, prior to this, I don't know why I keep skipping all the priors. Prior to this, I was reading books, I was researching, I was really working on myself because I felt like I internally knew it was time to just let go.
Yeah.
And I needed to do some searches, and he hated it. He hated that I wanted to do better for myself. That's what most of the
Why would you want to do better for yourself ever?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what most of the fights were about, though. The reason why the abuse was happening is because I wanted better. I wanted to go work out. I wanted to, read this amazing book and write notes. And he just got angry at the fact. But I thought to myself, because I'd kissed my daughter goodnight, I had tucked her in. I went to my bed and I said, do you just not have the balls to break up with me? Because you're beating me, you're yelling at me, and you tell me that I'm all of these horrible things, but then you apologize. Do you just not have the balls?
Yeah.
And the one thing you don't do to somebody who gets off on hurting people is challenge their masculinity.
Yeah, definitely.
That's just the one thing. And I knew that. I knew it's either I know he wouldn't do anything in front of my daughter. I know he wouldn't. It was probably a bad move to do anyways.
Yeah.
But if I say this, what's going to happen? This is probably going to be the time where he actually leaves. And he looked me in the face and he said, oh, you think I don't have the balls to do it, huh? And then he just got his stuff and he left. And a week later, he got sick in the hospital. He was calling me, asking me, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. And then he left to Reno for business. And I moved out. I was done.
Yep.
And it was like a revelation.
Right.
I'm good to be alone now. Because I took the steps to realize that maybe just being on my own is going to be a lot better for me than being with somebody who I can't do anything with. Maybe that was my sign. I just needed to realize that I couldn't read a book by myself. I couldn't go to take a walk with my daughter by myself. I could not go to the grocery store by myself. I could not wear clothing. I could not do anything. That was a time where I was like, I need to be alone. I need this, and I need to be away from people. And that's exactly what I did. And that's how your Little Big Sis happened. Because then I started talking about it on TikTok. And in those moments, I was going to therapy. The day after that we broke up, I started therapy, online therapy. I talked to somebody for an hour every 2 times a week. And I was really interested in what was going on in my brain. And it just clicked. Everything clicked all at once. And it was like, you have so much to offer that has been silenced by every person. So just show it. And that's exactly what I did. And that's how TikTok happened. That's how podcasting happened. But that's how I happened. That's how me, singular, Faith Williamson happened.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm just in this place to want to help and want to give. And I continuously, am gaining knowledge and talking to amazing people so I can actually continue to help others.
Right.
So I don't want to lose that anymore. I don't want to lose the silence. I don't want to lose being who I wanted to always be for another person, just to make sure that they're not alone, even though they're hurting me.
I have a question.
I've got answers.
Maybe. So this is gonna, I don't know if I'm going to phrase this question exactly how I have it. Maybe like percolating in my brain right now, but like, I think, so you have the Little Big Fam, right? You started the Little Big Fam. Is the Little Big Fam kind of like your way of getting like connected with other people and kind of getting that connection? Or is it something that kind of like you use to kind of get your own stuff out so that it doesn't bottle up in you? So I know that you're trying to help people, and that I already know that, so I don't want it to come off that I'm asking.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Right. But do you understand the question? Like, I'm just curious if you think that that's something that's kind of part of, you know, what you were just kind of describing, but on a different way, or maybe rechanneled. Maybe that's what it is. Rechanneled in a healthy way to help others.
Yes. So that's what I was actually asked before is, do I use your Little Big Family as my therapy? Like, was this created more for me than it was for anybody else? And I have to say, I think anything is created based off you than somebody else.
Right.
Because my fulfillment is helping other people, where I feel like most myself was always helping other people. I was a mentor, you know, in my church. I was, you know, always helping out all of my other friends. I was, you know, helping even my older friends. I always wanted to be that person because that's where I felt most fulfilled in. But I needed to do it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So the Your Little Big Family started by me wanting to just express my fulfillment. So I think it's very much so both. It just kind of blended into one. I want it to be something where it can connect to everybody so that nobody will ever have to feel like they're around a bunch of people, but lonely.
Right.
But I also wanted it to be something that I can give one day over to my daughter, you know, because now she's my fulfillment.
Yep.
But I wanted to give and continue to do, because when we do something that's massively changing hearts and minds and people in general, our spawn, of what I like to call her sometimes, my spawn, I'm just kidding. My little one is going to benefit from that in some way, shape, or form. And I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that the world is going to be worse off if I'm doing this. It's only going to
that's true.
Better.
Yeah.
But that's the same thing with anything that we do that's positive in life. What you're doing for the morning spotlight, what, you know, B could be doing, what anybody out there could be doing that is positive to another person is going to benefit our children.
Right. So talk to me also. Oh, go. No, you go first.
No.
You go first. I'm going to ask a question that's going to take us off topic. So you go first. Finish up your thought. Sorry.
Basically, altogether, it is a blend of both. I do it mostly, though, right now for the people who are in that struggling place, because I have just spent nights. I mean, I stay up until 3:00 in the morning every night, making sure I am educated, making sure that I can talk to people. I have 200 to 400 DMs every single day that I'm responding to, you know, through Instagram DMs with people who just really have questions. But I do that for everything, for the world. I'm trying to give back right now because I'm 25 and I'm going to have a lifetime to do so, but I want to start it now so that she also gets a part of it. Right. And it will only continue to do so.
Yeah.
But
right. So the other thing that kind of like, it's a good that I'll let you finish, because that perfectly segues into my next question. So the response. So one of the things that I think is just so great about what you've been able to build with the Your Little Big Fam is the community aspect of it. So you talk about how people are reaching out to you. The TikTok thing kind of popped when you first started getting on there. Yeah. The podcast, I know, also popped when you first put it out, because the podcast is younger than the Morning Spotlight. It started in October, right? Like late October, I think.
It was October 20th.
Yeah. So, that's my parents' anniversary. Fun fact.
That's my daughter's birthday.
Oh my God, this is insane.
Yeah.
So the response, because, you know, you talk about you have the DMs. I know you put the PO box on your Instagram, and I guess on the website also. Yeah. So the response that you get from that community, and I think it's just so interesting because it's so, when the way you talk about your community is it's so engaged. So did that take a while to kind of build that trust, or was it like you started putting stuff out there and people were just, well, I guess she couldn't have. It's not even a year old. Stupid question. But was it just like immediate, like people started sending you stuff, like you said, the DMs and then the letters, I guess also, like talk about the community aspect of it.
Yeah, so the community actually hit really, really quick. As soon as I started putting videos out there, there was one that really blew up, and it was my sunset car talks. And I talk about it all the time because if anybody asks me for some real like motivation, I go and tell them, or I download it and I just send them my motivational car talk, and I'm like, here you go. Like, this is for you. You need to hear this. In that moment, I went live, and then I started going live every single night on TikTok Live. That's what I did. And my community just blew up because of my lives. It was like I watered with my TikTok videos, but my lives were the things that were insane. I would have like 100 to 200 people, talking back and forth with me. And that's actually a lot. Most people who had as many followers as I had didn't even have that amount of people engaging on their lives, but I continued to do it every single night. And it eventually slowed down because I moved them over to Instagram. But from then, I always told them, if you ever need anything, just hit up my Instagram DMs, because I'm not always on here and you can't message me on TikTok. So that's when it started rolling in. And then people would come back on my lives and they're like, thank you so much for helping me out. Like, thank you so much for talking to me on Instagram. And I would sit there on my lives and also be, scrolling through my Instagram and saying, I'm approving you. DM me right now. This is not something I can, talk to on live because it'd be too elaborate and I need more information. And then it was just insane. The amount of people that would just, talk to me. I almost felt overwhelmed, but at the same time, I felt like, this is how many people are hurting. Like, you guys just scrolled past a TikTok and you're feeling this horrible. Like, this is something that everybody should hear, that they're somebody's proud of them, that somebody loves them. And I do tell people, I'm like, I do have a love for you. It may be not in love, it may be not anything, but as a human being who's doing something good for other people, not me, but them, I love you. And that's how your little big sis happened. And that's what's crazy is I let them name me. I was not your little big sis for about 2 months when I started Instagram or TikTok. I was just Faith Williamson. And then everybody's like, thanks, big sis. Thanks, little sis. Like, all of those things. And then all of a sudden I'm like on my live and there's probably about, almost 200 people. And they're like, I was asking them, I was like, should I be your guys' little big sis? Because that's all I hear is that I'm little big sis. Everybody is like, oh my gosh, yes, you need to do that. From there on out, that's who I was.
Yeah.
I was your little big sis. Most people don't even know my name. They just know your little big sis. And that's what they call me. And I'm okay with it. Like, because I built that. So I think because I continuously and gradually listen to them and ask them, and we're just there for them on a constant, they are always engaged with me. And it's crazy because I see it come over on my Instagram and my engagement on my posts, on my video, or on my video posts, on my regular posts, and even on my stories. I have insane engagement. And I'm like, they'll come back and message me something that's important to them. And that's just the community that keeps on arriving and continues. And that's what I love about it. And I'll always keep it that way.
Right.
But we always get, we do have to take some breaks and step backs at some points, but that's where I'm at.
Right. And so breaks and step backs, excuse me. So you did season 1, right?
Yes.
Season 1.
Yes.
So season 1, I went from October 20th to January or February? Mid-February. And then you're, I guess,
on a break.
You're on a break right now, but season 2 is coming, right?
It's coming. Yes. And we have, I'm so excited for the people that I'm going to have on, but I'm also excited for the audience because I'm bringing on people who are normal, everyday people. And then I'm bringing on people who are big names and that they'll know. And they'll be able to have that, kind of familiarity and what is it called? Attachment to somebody that they didn't realize that they can have an attachment to.
Yeah. And
so I'm super excited. I unfortunately did have to take an extended break. I was going to have all of this done, but with, certain things I can't say legally right now. With those certain things, I did have to push it back another month and a half than I was planning on to.
Okay.
Yeah.
But one of the other things that I thought, so you're mixing in interviews now coming up in season 2.
Yes.
Season 1 was all solo. And one of the things that I've heard you talk about on Clubhouse before is the fact that you put together like a script, I guess, and then record it, then edit it that night, right? And then get it out like the next day, or that's what you were doing, then. So how do you think of that stuff? And then like, is it just like spur of the moment, like, hey, I'm going to talk about this today, and then you just do it and then post it? Is that how it goes?
So no, actually, there is a process, but the recording aspect and the writing aspect all happens the night prior to the release date, which is crazy, right? You would never think that, those 45-minute or 35-minute things could be written and produced and edited before. But
this is going to take me weeks to to finally put together. So I commend you for that.
Yes. So what I would do is I would post the prior week about, I would ask leading questions for my audience, and I post it on my story. And within that, I would come up with my subject. And then the night before, after taking everything, all of the questions, I'd post about 5 questions, and I would put them all together and say, this is what people are focused on, and this is what people really need right now. And so in that moment, I would write a script, and it would take me maybe like 30 minutes to write it, and then the 35 to 45 minutes to actually sit down and talk and speak and write. And I would never 100% read from the script. There's always things I would go off topic on. Usually my experiences within those topics, that's where I would, just speak.
Talk about it, right?
Yeah. Speak freely anyways. And then I would press finish, and then I would get to editing. And it wasn't hard to edit because everything was pretty clear. I didn't have to clear out any likes, because most of it was just scripted.
Yep.
And then the or likes would come in these really small places in my experiences, and that was it. And I was willing to keep those things. So within those moments, I would have I really like to give myself like 5 seconds to restart something. So I'd pause and I would see those clips, so I'd be able to edit it out really quickly and then just throw it together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right.
And plus I have somebody helping me with my editing at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm watching them edit, but showing them where it's going.
Got it.
Just because I want to make sure everything is perfect in that realm. But
yeah, well, that's what I just think, like, and again, hashtag faith and faith. I think that like, that's just been one of the things, kind of like listening to you talk over the last, it's just crazy to me listening to that story, then knowing you over the last 3 months, and just knowing that like literally a year ago, you weren't even close to getting to where you were now. I mean, I guess, even myself to a certain degree, but not to like a level that you were at. But I think that is just something that's just, it's almost like hard to wrap my brain around it, because I know, like, I feel like I know you fairly well, not like really well, but fairly well, just in our conversations that we've had. And just knowing kind of like where you are now, and just like listening to you talk, like either, whether it's like our group chat that we have on Instagram, or if it's, on Clubhouse about whatever it is, and then also now like looking at the TikTok stuff and the Instagram stuff, like now with a different perspective. Now I think it's insane. And I think that is one of the things that I think is just so badass about you, is that you've kind of gotten yourself, like, you're 25 years old and you're probably worlds ahead of people that are, my age, older, whatever it is, just in like life experiences, and just like your perspective on life and how you go about talking about different things. So that's why, I mean, I had asked you a while ago, I know, about coming on the show, and then asked again, but that's just like, I just needed to say, big Faith Williamson fan, when he's listening.
I love when you say that, because you always say that. I'm like, oh, he's a fan. I'm a fan of Mike Ham. Like,
we're all big fans.
It rhymes, and then it just comes off really bad. I just rather not get into that. But no, I feel the same. I feel like when we see and we get to hear each other's experiences, and I'm talking about anybody.
Yeah.
We really forget that in those moments where you're sharing with somebody, you don't understand anybody until you do.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, say, like, you don't understand until you understand.
Right.
So I like to tell all of the people that I speak to, all of the people that I've touched, anything,
I said a year ago today, and it is true because it's only been up until this point, and I can kind of round it off. A year ago today, I wanted to KMS. I wanted to just be unalive at that point. And I don't feel like that. It just took one thing, and that was to just refocus on who I wanted to be and what I could do.
Right.
And a lot of people don't think about that. They don't. They just say, oh my gosh, like this is happening to me. This is happening to me. This is happening to me. And the world is against me. Until they can sit down and be like, oh, actually, but I can do this. I'm interested in this. I have goals now. Your life can change, but we can't change unless we're really sitting down with ourselves and figuring out that. So that's why I enjoy what I do. I will never stop enjoying what I do, is because I can really resonate with anybody going through anything, because a year ago I was that person.
Right.
In every way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So we've been talking for over an hour now, which is great.
I just saw. I just
looked down. I was like, oh my God, we've been going for over an hour. So I actually have 2 more questions, believe it or not. Then we'll do our closing segment. Then we'll wrap it up. So first question is just kind of like asking about the Little Big fam, this is all still like a very new thing. So I'm always interested to kind of like hear goals from people as they move forward in different projects and lives that they're working on and all that kind of stuff. So maybe like just take it like the next year. Like, what are some things that you hope? I don't even care what you talk about. It could just be like personal development type stuff. What are some things that you're hoping to accomplish over the next year?
Yeah. So within the next year, I pretty much already have it set out. I actually was going to start on getting my NLP license, and that's only for the fact of, I don't want to be an NLP, but I want to know the knowledge of an NLP. It's a life coach basically, but you go a lot deeper into learning about how the mind works and how successful people work and how their minds work. So I want to do that, and I want to have that knowledge, and it'll take me about a year. But within that time, I want to expand the Your Little Big family, and I want to do Facebook groups, and where other people who are in my position can kind of come in and help me out and make it a bigger group. So everybody can just go on an app or on a Facebook group and just talk and let it out and say, hey, this is where I'm at, and just have those guidelines to where people can really connect with one another. And that's where I want to go. That's where I see Your Little Big family going at this point. But with Your Little Big Sis Podcast, I just see me continuing to be a podcaster, speaking to people. This is where I'm going to continue to water, those people, and they can listen and then come back. But there's going to be more outside things that are going to, bring people in, but also be able to actually have a bigger, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about that. I don't know why there's a random alarm on my phone.
Time's up. All right.
I'm like, what?
This has been great.
I think actually because I took a nap yesterday for the first time in like 6 months. So I was like, I got to wake up at 4:15. There's things I have to do.
Yeah, right.
No, but there's so many things that I want to do. But in this next year, I do have it focused on the Facebook group and, just getting like-minded people like me who are willing to jump aboard and be a part of this movement. But 5 years from now, I'm thinking, okay, let's get a whole mentorship program, where they're set up in schools. They're set up in, other places like, what is it called? AA meetings. Like, let's do it on a broader spectrum, but that's not for a long time.
Yeah, right.
Right now, I'm thinking, very short term, which is great for me. I need to do things short term, as being a mom, you can't always plan everything out according to what you want it.
Yeah.
But that's where I see myself going. That's why I see everybody coming along with me too, because that's what people are asking for. So in this moment, I'm just trying to give that as a singular person, but I can't always do it as a singular person. There's too many people.
Yeah. No, I get that. And just talking about the level or the size and the scope of the community and the engagement that you do get, I totally get that. All right. So last question, maybe the most important question of the whole episode. So just buckle up, because this is going to be a big one. Best Avengers movie that's not Endgame, say any of that. Like one of the fringy ones. So it has to be like either Iron Man movie or a Thor.
Okay.
Which one? I know mine.
I think this one is mine because it's my daughter's. and it's gonna be Black Panther.
Okay,
sure.
well that's a fantastic one.
It you know what, I don't know what it was, but she connected so much to Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
When I had to tell her that she couldn't meet him, we cried. I cried because she cried, but we cried for 2 whole days.
Oh my God.
About this man who she didn't know, but for some reason it connected not only her to him, but it connected me to that movie in that moment, because there was a lot of good points, and I was able to explain to her what was going on and how, family dynamics. I think that was one of the biggest things that happened for me to connect with that movie so much, and because I really like the action scenes, and it's so gorgeous, the scenes that are there.
Very cool.
Yeah, and the tech, there was a lot of new tech but old school ways, and that immediately grabbed my attention.
Yeah.
So that's probably, that's mine.
I was going to say Guardians, because Guardians has the best soundtrack out of any of the movies, bar none. And I just think that it's funny. So that's, not to the level that you were just talking about.
It's not deep connected like that.
It's not a deep connection, but that's just kind of like how I operate. Like I connect with those types of movies, and Guardians, both of them. The soundtrack's off the charts, and then they both made me laugh. So there you go.
It's funny. My daughter's and mine second favorite is Guardians, because she loves Gamora, and I'm like, I love it because it's hilarious, and I resonate with a lot of funny, like dark humor in that way. So I definitely agree. This has been so much fun. I don't even realize that it's already.
I know. Time flies when you're having
an
fun.
hour.
Right. But we're not done yet.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to move the show into our closing segment, which we call Under the Spotlight. So
beautiful.
The Spotlighters have been listening to Faith Williamson and Mike Hamm talk for literally an hour and 15 minutes at this point.
Yeah.
So what is one thing that you want them to walk away from this episode with? So you're under the spotlight.
I 100% will say that you are never as alone as you believe to be. You just have to be comfortable with yourself, because lonely does not mean alone. And that's where we can really bridge the two and really come together. And there's always a Your Little Big family along the line to help you out when you're ready for that. But that's what I would say, 100%.
I think that's great. And I think that puts a nice bow on this episode. So we've already talked about it literally a million times, but where can people go to get more Faith Williamson?
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% go ahead on my Instagram. You can inbox me at any point in time. My podcast is on Apple Podcast and Spotify at Your Little Big Sis. It's very easy. You can go to my website, Your Little Big Sis, and pretty much on TikTok, Your Little Big Sis. It's everywhere the same across the boards. And yeah, that's exactly where you can find me, and I'll always be there.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's true. Yeah, Clubhouse also. Don't forget Clubhouse.
Yes. I'm at podcast.
Yeah. You're at podcast.
I'm literally at podcast. I did that marketing little there.
That's really smart. I didn't honestly, until you just said it, I did not even know that until just now.
So usually, like when people are interested in podcasts and stuff and things like that,
they find Faith Williamson.
Comes up as me.
Yeah.
So that was a great little move I did there.
Yeah, like some type of Trojan horse type, marketing type thing. I think that's great. So, all right. So I will make sure I put all those. Basically, it's Your Little Big Sis. So if you're listening and you've made it this far with us and you don't know what Faith's brand is, I don't even know why you're listening. But I will make sure that I put all that stuff, like I said, in the show notes. So make sure you go check that out if you want to go connect with Faith, learn more about Your Little Big Sis and the whole message and stuff, the content that she's putting out, because it's all amazing. That's why she's here. I will make sure that I put my stuff in there as always. themorningspotlight.com and themorningspotlight@gmail.com is the email address. Faith, thank you so much for coming on with us today. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful. Anybody feel free to follow along, and hopefully I'll be back on, you'll be on my show next, Mike.
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah.
I would love that, actually.
Okay. All right. I'm in. All right. And then if you were a part of the Little Big fam or a spotlighter and you've made it this far with us, thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Bye, guys.